Hey everybody, AwesomeMattG here, and today we have another novel idea video, and we're going to be covering The Fold by Peter Clines. And joining us today, like always, we have Capricious,
Hello.
and we also have a special guest today, Lucid Burrito.
Hello.
So, like with all of our other videos, if you haven't read the book and you don't want any spoilers, you should stop now because we're going to ruin the entire book for you. So, what did you guys think of the book?
Well, you know what I thought. I found the book on Goodreads and read it in like a day and then forced you to read it, which in turn you told everyone else to read it. So I quite liked it.
Forced.
Yeah, forced.
Yeah, I felt like I knew where the book was going, and then I didn't, and it was great, and I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, there was some stuff like, as I was reading the book, I kept thinking to myself, I know what this is. I totally know what this is. And then
Yeah.
later on I was like, for example, at the point in the book where Bob walks through the door and then he comes out the other side and he's all like twisted and mangled and messed up and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I thought to myself, because they comment at one point and say something to the effect of, it seems like it's been a year. And I thought, okay, there's a time delay between going in the door and coming out. Maybe this was like wormhole Jumanji, where he went somewhere and got stuck there for a year, and then a year later the portal opened again and he jumped through and was like, I'm back.
Yeah, I thought the same thing too.
Yeah, and then it didn't even dawn on me that it was a
Multiverse.
yeah, a multiverse, and it was kind of like, what are those? I forget the name of the things. The little cradles. It's called something cradle, where you've got the little marbles on ropes and you drop them and they knock back and forth.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
remember what that's called, but yeah.
But yeah, it seemed like it was kind of like that, where like you would go in, and as soon as you went through the door, it would push somebody on the other side into your realm,
Yeah.
your universe, or whatever you want to call it.
It was,
I agree.
I had when the book first started. Once they talked about having the door itself, I thought, oh, they're going into different dimensions, but I didn't realize it was going to be like they mentioned, like a croquet, where you get knocked into one universe and knock someone else out of theirs, and so that was weird for me.
Yeah, that was
But-
totally unexpected.
Yeah.
I agree. But yeah, I thought the whole concept of giving Mike an eidetic memory where he could memorize everything instantly,
Yeah.
like there's so much stuff in the book that you would, if they tried to explain the, connecting the dots along the lines with anything else other than him having a perfectly photographic memory, it wouldn't have made sense. You'd been like, how would you make that kind of a connection? That just seems stupid.
Right.
It seems like you're just reaching for something. But the fact that they gave him that eidetic memory was like, that was amazing to me, because it totally brought everything to the story together without making it feel like it was being forced. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm more interested in hearing what you guys said, because I feel like for me this is a role reversal. Usually I'm the one that talks and keeps the conversation going, which I realize I do a pretty good job because you guys keep having these lulls.
Well, I was. One of the things I didn't like was the, and it goes back to
Well,
having.
you're saying you don't like something, so obviously you're wrong.
Well, it's not that I didn't like this part of the book. It's just that I didn't like the characters, but it makes sense for the story. And like with Mike having eidetic memory, the way they explain it, but the characters, like the Albuquerque door team, act like he can't be coming to these conclusions. That doesn't make sense. And
Yeah.
they have like that personal bias that, no, we're not wrong, even though we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, kind of like how he kept going, like periodically throughout basically the first half of the book, he kept going, yeah, I get all of this, but how does it work? And they're all
Right.
like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you can't just say, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to explain to me how to make my own door, but, I mean, there needs to be some kind of explanation as to what's happening. And they were just like, no, you just walk on through.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's not an explanation as to what is occurring, though.
And that,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that was really frustrating because, especially right after the Bob incident, when the next day when what was her name? I forget now.
Jamie?
Jamie, yeah, when she goes through the door and everybody's like, "No, it's fine. Everything works. We proved it." It's
Yeah.
like that's not the scientific method. You can't just toss someone back into the blender and hope they come out okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because when she was like, yeah, I just walked through the door, I was all like, the fuck is your problem? Are you crazy?
Yeah, there's.
Because I think you and I had a similar outlook on that, because I had the same thought. I was all like, how are these people claiming to be scientists? This is the most unscientific way of doing this. But I also get the fact that they were kind of covering their own asses in the aspect of when later you learn that they literally have no fucking clue how any of this works.
Yeah.
And so they're like desperately grasping for straws in order to try to save their careers, which obviously if this thing just completely fails, you're going to go, well, there goes our career, because they just dumped millions of dollars on us and we have literally nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can kind of see that aspect of trying to save their own asses, but it was very annoying. It was very...
frustrating.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably the only part of the book that actually made me angry. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around that kind of thought process.
I didn't think it was necessarily, like you said, you hated that part, and I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't think it's necessarily that you hated that part of the book, it's you hated that part of those characters.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it didn't necessarily make the book bad, it's
No,
just...
yeah.
It made you go, God, why are these people so fucking stupid?
You are not scientists. This is junior high elementary.
I know, it's like trying to build a baking soda volcano. They're like, look, it blows up. It's like, but that's not science. That's just going, look what happens. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I feel like their whole thought process was.
Yeah. The other thing that, like, in aspect of the Bob situation, when you slowly start figuring out, when the book starts explaining to you what is literally happening, how you're knocking somebody from a different dimension into this dimension, and they start figuring that part out, right then it clicked in my mind and I went, holy shit, if the Bob that came out of the door came from this world where obviously shit just hit the fan, that also means that regular normal Bob just went into a hell world.
Yeah.
And so in his mind, he walked through the door and came out normal, and yet the rest of the world got destroyed. So he's going to think the door destroyed the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, because he didn't know how it worked either at the time.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, what a huge mind fuck.
Yeah, and they never bring that up. They're like, oh, they're not even like, oh, poor Bob is in some war zone now. They're just like, Bob's dead. That kept coming back to me, and it was. But I have another weird theory about it, is that because it's two portals. You know, one person goes in, and I don't think that person from that universe comes back to yours. I think it's like in a line.
Well, that's what they mention it at some point. Is it's not necessarily a chain of just two dimensions to each other at that one given point.
Yeah.
It's possible that, you know, the Bob that died came from a hell dimension, and the normal Bob went into some other normal dimension, but there may have been like 7 or 10 or 100 different dimensions in a line, and everybody just got knocked around one.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the point, I think, in the book where talking about the fact they're like, well, let's just wait to see if it comes around again. And it's like, there's literally no way to tell how many options there are.
If there's one alternate dimension, there's uncountable alternate dimensions.
Yeah, there's an infinite number. And it's like, that's why you've just gotten lucky that up until this point, all the other alternate dimensions were, close enough that nobody noticed anything different.
Right, yeah.
Like later on in the book when they talk about the fact that they ran a test on the door and he looked at, I think it was Olaf, looked at Sasha and went, it's weird. The light over there makes your hair look red.
Right, yeah, and she just laughed it off, and then when he talked to her later, she didn't remember any of that.
Yeah, exactly, because it was a completely different person.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, that is such a trip.
That is super. I thought they were hinting at that a lot of times when Mike was looking through the portal. Like he could see from one camera angle and then from another camera angle, and he was looking down from the control room. I thought they were going to try to, he would see differences, but they never really mentioned any.
I think what the main purpose of that was that because he was in the control room looking down at the door, and he was also looking at some of the cameras and monitors that were on the main floor looking through the door, he was actually able to see, with a combination of all those different views, he could see the majority of the other building.
Right.
So when he would comment about something like so-and-so was at the other workstation at Site B, you're going, well, if you were up above the door, how could you see that? Well, he saw it through one of the monitors, through the other security camera.
Right.
And
they did use that in the when they were taking the coupling off, and they said it was leaking, and he said no, it wasn't.
Yeah, I saw it from 3 different angles.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was absolutely no leakage. And then they were like, yeah, we have to replace parts just so it looks like we're actually doing something, because we have no fucking idea what we're doing. And I was just like, that's what I mentioned to Cappy at one point, is I was like, how do you get to this point? Like, as soon as the door opened for the first time and they looked through it and they were like, holy crap, and they tossed like a baseball through it and they were like, it's over here, and they're like, great, that's all well and good that this actually functions properly, but at that point, when you didn't know what was happening, you should have immediately stopped and been like, I got no fucking clue how this works.
Right.
We're not putting anything else through this door until we can figure out what's going on. And they were all like, come on, cat, let's go through.
Yeah. Well, they do bring that up toward the I guess toward the end, I guess the end act. When they were talking about they got drunk and they had to come up with something, or Reggie was going to shut them down, and they ended up using that and it worked. So they just started tossing more stuff in. And
yeah, what was the name of that dude who wrote the book?
Alexander Kodorovic.
Alexander Kodorovic, yeah. The fact that they just throw this guy's random gibberish math into the equation and all of a sudden the door opens and they're all like, I guess it worked.
I would be suspicious.
Yeah. Especially with the other crap this dude was talking about,
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, well, maybe, obviously he wasn't 100% wrong with all of his craziness, so maybe some of his other craziness is accurate, too.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it turned out to be.
Super accurate.
Fucking Cthulhu monsters and shit.
Oh, man, that was, my mind was literally melting at that point.
I know.
I was like, what is going on?
I mean, they started with, that's one thing that I didn't quite understand, and I'm sure it was meant to be left open, or maybe I overlooked it and somebody can explain it to me now or in the comments or whatever, but if the door was opening to any number of random dimensions, and it's not necessarily that the door would reopen to that same dimension over and over again, how were the green cockroaches always there? Like, is that just something that always happens around a portal?
What?
Because it was almost always were there green cockroaches. Not every single time, but a lot of the time.
I can say, because I also read Peter Clines' book 14, and the green cockroaches are in there as well, that having read both, I assume it's just those cockroaches exist where there's interdimensional travel. Whether you know it or not, they're just a sign of it, I assume.
It's kind of like a side effect of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's true because the girl, I forget her name at the end, that talks
Sasha?
to Mike. No.
No, the Indian lady.
Yeah, she asks were there green cockroaches, and I think they investigate like interdimensional shenanigans, and that's apparently that's apparently like a telltale sign that of what's going on there.
The next
At least
person
that's my
that says
theory.
shenanigans. Larva. But yeah, that was one thing, and then I mean you had the I forget what they called them, but the bug men. They have a specific name for them.
Now I'm forgetting.
The bug crab warrior dudes.
Yeah, he called them alphas, but they weren't alphas.
Yeah. And then you had the Frankenstein Stitch monster, which was made out of multiple human bodies.
Yeah, I wish they would explain that more.
Yeah, I know.
It's like is so because they talked about the big giant monster also had a bunch of human pieces on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, are they giant monsters that are collecting human pieces, or are they just giant monsters made out of human pieces?
Well, he mentions at one point that he smiled with human teeth, and he's going, maybe it was actually a human?
Yeah. Well, he does say that it used to be human. Because when he wants to drag him closer to the portal to use his mental energy to get all the explosives back on the portal.
Yeah.
He says he once was human. So I guess he's still got a human brain.
Probably, yeah. But yeah, I'd like to learn a lot more about that.
I'm hoping he does make a sequel so we get more.
Well, it's like I tweeted at the guy and I'm like, oh, please, God, tell me you're working on a sequel. And he was like, maybe.
I mean, he left it way open for a sequel.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, then they could... the last half of that last chapter, basically, it made me feel like it was going towards a Hellboy-ish style of thing, where they're like this group of people that go around investigating interdimensional travel.
Yeah.
And because they mentioned when she shows up, she's like, yeah, we've seen this happen a few times before. So obviously this is most certainly not the first time this was experimented on.
Yeah.
So
or she even brought up the book too. So apparently it's
Kodorovich's book, yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, you're using mathematical equations by a Victorian author. And he was like, how the hell do you know that? She's like, yeah, this has happened before. So, but and then I think they did a really good job in describing the Cthulhu monster at the very end, the bigger than a 747 thing.
Yeah.
Like he kept describing like how big the wings were, like they were hundreds of meters across, and that started like I've never really been. I've always had interest in like the Lovecraftian style monsters,
right?
But I've never done a lot of research into them. And then when he started describing it in the book, I was like, "Oh my God, this just sounds so creepy."
I imagine it would be, and just the way they describe just how it flies, how it creates a sandstorm underneath of it. It's just it's huge.
And it's
crazy
got its
scale.
Octopus tentacle face.
Yeah.
So how are you as far as pleased with Mayan Lucid's reaction so far? Since this was kind of your baby.
I'm enjoying it, although as I hear you guys talk, I want both of you to read 14 now, because that's the book that preceded The Fold. So it shares a lot of this stuff, and I actually just made a connection when you talked about the Indian lady. I was like, oh man, that's the chick from 14. Like, it all starts to make sense to me. I don't necessarily think you have to read it because it's not really a prequel, but there's a lot more answers about the like motives of the Cthulhu monsters and There's a little more information about Alexander Kodorovic in that book, so it really helps set everything up. And there's just a lot of connections to be made, but I mean, I'm enjoying what you guys are talking about because it's the way I felt about the book.
Yeah, I think I'll actually go back and read 14 now, because I'm getting, as I sit here and let the book like stew in my mind, I'm getting more and more like, what does this mean?
Well, and it's like I said, 14 is much more mystery. I mean, it's still sci-fi, but that comes in at the end. So in the beginning, it's the Scooby Gang trying to figure out what the hell's going on. But it's still really good, and the audio narrator is Ray Porter again, so it's the same one that read The Fold. So if you enjoyed him, you'll enjoy 14.
Yeah. What do you think about the narrator, Lucid?
I loved him. He did a great job. I feel at first I didn't like him because a lot of his voice, or a couple of his voices for Reggie sounded a lot like Bill Clinton. And it just kept giving me hints of he's trying to do a Bill Clinton voice. And then someone else, I don't remember who the voice was, but it kept giving off Tom Hanks.
It was the main doctor guy.
Arthur.
Arthur Cross.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I connected that one. I was like, God, this voice sounds so familiar. Who is this? And then when you just said that, I was like, that's who it is.
The whole time I was thinking, I was like, this guy could do a really good Bill Clinton and Tom Hanks voice. But other than that, I mean, I thought he did a really great job.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of emotion, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
And
he's an actor as well, so that's
really?
why I think he's really good at putting emotion into his voice.
Well,
Yeah,
he did a great job.
I think he also did really good with the Stitch monster's voice.
Oh yeah.
How creepy that was! I was like,
Yeah.
God, he sounds like a monster. Ugh. I don't know. What is there anything else you wanted us to touch on specifically?
Oh, who are you talking to? Me?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I thought you were talking to Lucid, so I was waiting for him to answer. I was like,
either one of you, really.
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, pretty much everything you guys talked about was stuff that I have written down, like that they didn't know what was going on. And what did you think about the very first part of like Ben Miles, where the very first chapter?
Lucid, you go.
That was it was a weird intro for me, I guess, a little bit. Just having her being about the wife, and then when he comes in, I didn't know. Well, I mean, of course I didn't know, but it was really good, and it was kind of a trip. But it also led me to believe about they're going into different dimensions once they brought up the portals later. But yeah, I liked it, and it was crazy, and I feel bad for the guy.
Yeah.
And his wife.
Oh God, yeah. Because I kind of thought once I started figuring out, and you found out later that it was interdimensional travel, and you found out that you're knocking people from other dimensions into your dimension type deal. I went back and thought about that chapter, and I was like, it makes a lot more sense now, because you think about it and you're like, okay, the guy comes home and she mentions that she goes into the hallway and looks under the table for his briefcase, because that's where he always puts it, and it's not there. So she's like, obviously it's not him. But then she goes like into the kitchen and she sees his briefcase sitting there, and so she's like, well, it's him, because that's his shit, but it's not where it normally goes. And it's because in whatever dimension he came from, that's how things happened. The one thing I didn't understand is, and it may just have been like maybe her hair color was different, or maybe she just acts different. But when he was all like, "You're not my wife. You look like her. What did you do with her?" And it was like, well, maybe she had a completely different like personality or something. I don't know.
What I think it. Oh,
Sorry,
go ahead.
go ahead.
What I think it might have been, because they focused on this so much, is maybe his wife wasn't a slob. Because they focused so much on that she always left everything around the house, and it was fine because he totally knows she's like that. It would be like if you came home and it was like someone with OCD cleaned our house, you'd be like, what the hell happened here? You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
I like that Lucid agrees, and I'm totally like,
yeah, like,
totally mad.
of course you're a slob.
Yeah, I'm totally messy. But yeah, I mean, it may have just been something like that. Maybe not necessarily hair color, because he never said like she has a different hair color or whatever. He just knew it wasn't his wife.
Well, my thought was that he'd come in and they probably, like most people, have pictures of themselves in the area, and he probably saw, who is this chick that has replaced my wife in all these pictures? And so, I don't know if he saw her, or because I mean he goes directly for the gun, basically, or he goes through the house, which you may be right, and he's just say, "What is this slob living here now?" But I mean he goes directly for the gun and then catches her and knows immediately it's not her or his wife.
Maybe it's also like in the pictures. Maybe the pictures were of different situations than like, because obviously you would have pictures of you and your wife in your dimensional house.
Right.
But maybe they were from different scenarios, or maybe you never went on a vacation to Disneyland, but now there's a picture of you and your wife at Disneyland. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
And you're like, who the hell are you? Because we've never gone to Disneyland together, and there's a picture of us. So what the hell's going on? Maybe I didn't think about that. That makes a lot of sense now.
And I mean, they really couldn't emphasize on it unless there was part with Ben. Part with him a part of the story, because I mean they can't go to a different dimension and find out what his life was like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a crazy part.
And he kept calling Reggie pal or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Reggie's like, well, that's weird. He's never done that before. I guess he just picked it up while he was out in California.
Yeah, and what I think emphasizes that the multiverse, the dimensions aren't all that different, is that Mike never noticed the difference in Reggie, and they've been friends since at least college. And so I mean they've obviously still very similar.
Yeah, well, he mentions that the majority of times everything goes completely unnoticed.
Yeah,
because it's like, well, if you're going off of the whole quote-unquote multiverse idea, is that there's an infinite number of universes, and in every single universe there's only one minor difference. So it may just be that, like, on the way to work today you had a flat tire, and in this universe you didn't, and that's the only difference between the two universes. So the person comes through and you can't freaking tell. You may go, hey, remember how I got the flat tire today? And you're all like, no. And then you go out and check and your spare is still there, and you're like, I could have sworn I had a flat tire. Maybe that was a dream I had last night.
Yeah.
But, and they mentioned that a couple of times, because with Arthur forgetting his wife's anniversary, obviously he was married to the same lady for roughly the same amount of time, but maybe their anniversary was like 2 days different.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
They do kind of mention, Mike mentions that Reggie is more protective of him, like asking him, are you okay? Are you doing all right? And he says that he guessed his alternate version was softer.
It's more of a puss.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is possible. And even just a personality quirk difference could be enough to set off the two universes as being divergent enough to do that. Yeah,
and they mentioned that too, because everyone's body language is wrong, and that's why everyone feels so awkward around everyone, and it feels tense because no one knows each other's body language all of a sudden.
Yeah, they're like, you're just holding yourself differently than you were last week type deal. Yeah, I get that, because sometimes, like, I'll be at work, for example, and I'll see one of my coworkers come in, and he'll have a completely different body language than he normally does, and I'll be like, wow, I can just tell by the way he's walking, I know he's in a bad mood or whatever.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, at that point, that's always the case now, because every form of body language is different now.
Yeah, every time you come through the portal, it looks like everyone's either mad or just in a totally different mood. Yeah,
because there were a couple of times where, and I guess it made sense, too, because Olaf, when he first gets there, when Mike first gets there, he's like, Olaf seems like a bit of a dick. And then, like, halfway through the time period of him there in California, Olaf all of a sudden opens up, and he's really nice to the guy for a couple of days. And then he turns into a cold, brutal asshole again. And I didn't exactly track when Olaf was going through the door at that point, but I know he went through the door 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
During the process of the book. So it's possible that he went through and exchanged places with a nicer Olaf. It's really trippy when you think about it.
Yeah, it's thick mind soup.
But yeah, I could totally. And then it didn't connect with me either when they were in the Cthulhu dimension, and Sasha was hanging out with Jamie in there, and it didn't connect at all that there was a different person until Jamie was like, "Where are your stitches?"
Yeah.
And I was like, all of a sudden I was like, "Oh shit, that's a different Sasha." And then it went back to Mike's point of view, and he was sitting there with Sasha with stitches, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be awkward."
I was wondering at that point, I was like, because Mike mentions earlier, maybe it's a self-correcting problem, and I was wondering if she come back through the portal, if one of them was just gonna explode.
Yeah, or just dissipate into nothingness, or what. And then, like, when the Indian lady shows up at the end, and she's all like, "So, I was looking through the dossiers, and it doesn't say anything about twins." And Mike's like, "Yeah, they're twins." She's like, "Okay, I think I can help you with that." So immediately she knew what had happened.
Yeah.
She was like, "Obviously, that's another dimensional person. We're gonna have to compensate for." And I loved how they kept referring to these doubling ups as quantum donuts.
Yeah.
So it's like Dasha, I guess is what they ended up calling her. They're like, Dasha is just a quantum donut. I was like, this sounds so ridiculous.
Well, he came up with that name from the first I guess the first noticeable case of things doubling up was the doubler of donuts.
Yeah, exactly. And that was another thing that I didn't quite understand, and I still didn't quite get it towards the end, but when Mike mentions it to Jamie, is when all of a sudden the chocolate croissant started showing up. I thought that had something to do with the door.
Yeah, I did too.
And then they mentioned later, they're like, no, Jamie just asked Reggie what he liked to eat and added it to the order. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, well, it's less exciting, but it's also like, oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. Well, I think it keys in later, because when Jamie is questioning whether Mike's universe, Jamie, liked Mike, he says, well, she ordered the donuts the day before the jump. So then, yeah.
So obviously she was at least trying. Yeah.
She says, so I guess I followed for you in every dimension, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, every dimension so far. But yeah, anything else you guys wanted to cover?
I think the only other cool thing that I thought was, because, they mentioned in the beginning of, like, so many people getting the flu. And I thought that was a nice little detail of that these people that are coming through from other dimensions are going to have different bacterias and different flu strains and things, which isn't anything you think about. And it's just similar to like with the Earth Abides when people come from different areas, which is why everyone was getting so sick, is because every time someone went through the door, someone else came through with different strains of the cold and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's something that didn't click for me until the very end either. So yeah, it was like, wow, these people have different immunities.
Yeah,
and they're bringing over different strains. Yeah, I think it's something subtle, but I like those kinds of little touches that really make, it's like all the little tendrils that get out into the universe. It's a nice little touch.
Right.
But no, I mean, other than that, I really loved the book. I was really just in love with it when I was reading it, which is why I made you drop everything to read it. So, and I'm really glad, Lucid, that you really enjoyed it as well, because when I told Matt to read it, I had this huge fear that he would be like, it was all right, when I was so in love with it.
I had actually heard of this book a while back. I saw it, but I didn't read anything about it. I just thought, that looks kind of neat, and then I just kind of brushed it, because I was doing I was trying to read up on all the Dune at the time.
Mm.
And but yeah, Matt's like, you need to read this book right now. I was like, okay.
Yeah, because I had just I was like, when I told you about it, I was probably halfway through, and by then my mind had already been blown like 3 times reading the book, and I was like, oh my god, this is so good.
I think that's the point. I messaged you when I was halfway through. It was like, oh my god, this book is so awesome.
Yeah. Well, I knew you'd be able to knock it out really quick, because I'm like, you drive for like 10, 12 hours a day, so I'm like,
Yeah.
you're going to knock this out in 1 or 2 days, man. This is
I'm actually almost finished with the second read of it.
Oh, you're rereading it a second time?
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't blame you, because when Matt and I would go for like a drive, he would listen to it in the car, and I was like, I should reread it right now. Like, I want to reread it immediately.
Yeah.
It's really good. I mean, you know, like a lot of books, you read them once and then you read them twice, and they don't feel like they, I guess, have the same replay value. But like this one, like as soon as it started over, and I was into it all in again, just like the first time. It was really good.
I think what I'll probably do is I'll probably go and read 14, and then after I'm done reading 14, I'll probably turn around and read The Fold again.
That you know, making a lot of more connections.
Yeah, exactly. Because then I'll be like, oh my god, that's right, this and that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really hoping this guy makes this into at least a short series or something.
Yeah,
So-
I was gonna go on to reading X Heroes, which was also by Peter Clines, but now that you mentioned that 14 ties into The Fold, I'm just gonna do that first.
Yeah, I recommend it. I mean, I think The Fold was superior, but I'm definitely glad I read 14, because it really expanded so much on a lot of the questions I had.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I unless you guys have anything else you wanted to cover, I think that'll about do it.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm glad.
All right. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. This has been kind of a one-off one because we didn't announce this one ahead of time, but anybody that followed me on Twitter probably expected this coming pretty soon. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.